The ugliest building downtown is about to be yours. 7 levels of bare concrete, a gate that swings up out of the way, and a product you will never restock because the product is the empty air between 2 painted lines. The plan barely qualifies as one. Paint the stripes, raise the arm, charge by the hour. Every instinct says this is the laziest good business in America. Nothing on a shelf to spoil, break, or walk off. A machine takes the money, so the payroll rounds towards zero. And the F? Customers cannot really refuse, because the one thing every driver downtown must buy is a place to stop driving. Then someone counts the competition. The government does not track parking spaces, so the late UCLA economist Donald Shoup spent years estimating the total, and he put it somewhere between 700 million and 2 billion spaces nationwide. At the high end, that is roughly 8 parking spots for every registered vehicle in the country. 8 for every one. By any normal law of supply and demand, parking should be the worst business in America, and across most of the map it is not even a business, it is given away free with every errand. Yet the deck you just bought charges real money all day long, and both of those facts manage to be true at once. By the roof level of this video, that contradiction gets settled, along with 3 other things. You will know what a parking garage actually sells, because it has never really been parking. You will know what the owner of a decent deck honestly clears in a year. And you will know what the road salt dripping off your customers' tires has been doing to buildings like yours for decades. Because in Lower Manhattan, one of them finally stopped standing up. This channel walks through ordinary businesses the way an appraiser does, floor by floor, with the brochure left at the door. Subscribe, and there will be a fresh walkthrough waiting here every week. Dotty of Tin Lum. Start at street level, with the price of getting in, because a garage is 2 completely different purchases depending on whether it exists yet. Building new is the brutal version. Researchers at UCLA collected parking construction costs across 17 American cities and found that in 2025, one above-ground space cost about $52,000 to build, and one underground space about $73,000, before counting the land, the permits, or the financing. Stack that into a modest 300-space deck and you have poured roughly $15 to $16 million, and the expensive markets run away from there. In Portland, Oregon, a single underground space now averages more than $110,000. Keep that construction number in your pocket, because in a few minutes it is going to break this whole business open. Buying an existing garage is the sane version, and it is priced like income real estate. Appraisers work off capitalization rates, the year's net operating income divided by the price. And published parking cap rates run roughly 5 to 10%. With New York City's tax commission using 4.5 to 8.5 for garages in its own guidelines. In plain terms, hand over $2 million for a small deck at those rates, and the market expects it to clear somewhere between $100,000 and $200,000 a year after operating costs. Either way, notice how the arithmetic opens upside down. You are spending office building money on a structure with no walls, no lobby, and no tenant on a 10-year lease. And the arm on the gate has not lifted for a paying customer yet. 3 line items never make the listing photos. The first is the tax bill, because parking may be the most heavily taxed square footage in urban America. On top of property taxes assessed on prime downtown land, many big cities tax the parking transaction itself. Roughly 18% of every receipt in Manhattan, 20% in Chicago and Philadelphia, 25% in San Francisco, and in Pittsburgh a national record of 37.5%, a rate that by one Pennsylvania Policy Institute's count brings the city more money than taxing its own residents' wages.
The second is liability.
A garage is a dim building full of moving cars, strangers on foot, and other people's property, which translates into fender claims, slip and falls, break-ins, and an insurance premium that only learns one direction. The third is not a bill but a calendar. Engineering firms report that an open parking structure deteriorates 2 to 3 times faster than an enclosed building made from the same materials, and their prescription is a standing maintenance program priced at $30 to $90 per space every single year. Skip a few years and the list does not wait politely, it compounds. What that compounding looks like at its absolute worst is parked a few floors up. So where does the money come from? Build the business from nothing in your head first. Imagine a hotel where every room is a bare concrete rectangle. No bed, no towels, no housekeeping, no front desk, and every guest lets themselves in, stays 2 hours, and leaves without saying a word. Run the rooms like that, and the rate card looks like this. Hourly and daily traffic, what the trade calls transient parking, pays the headline numbers: $65 to $80 for a day in Midtown Manhattan, $40 to $75 across the rest of the borough, and softer but real numbers in every major downtown. Monthly parkers pay far less per hour but pay every month: $100 to $300 in a typical American city, $500 to $700 in Manhattan, and up to $1,400 in its most crowded corners. Per space, per year, the national spread is enormous, running from around $600 in a soft market to $6,000 in a strong downtown, with premium locations clearing $10,000 or more. And the honest middle shows up in public filings. Mobile Infrastructure Corporation, the only publicly traded company in America devoted purely to owning parking, reported about $37 million of revenue in 2024 across roughly 15,300 spaces, which works out to some $2,400 per space. Now take that construction number back out of your pocket. $2,400 a year of gross revenue against $52,000 to build the space is less than 5 cents on the construction dollar. And that is gross, before one dime of tax, insurance, or upkeep. Which is why almost nobody pours new concrete expecting the parking to pay for it, and why the garages that actually make money were bought used, below what it would cost to build them today, on corners the city grew around. That is the reframe, said plainly. A parking garage is not really a business that sells parking. It is a way of owning a piece of downtown that covers its own carrying costs while you hold it. The tickets pay the taxes and the note. The dirt underneath does the real earning. The meter runs by the hour. The land compounds by the decade. Still, the professionals squeeze the operating side hard, and they squeeze in 3 places: mix, price, and headcount. Mix is the quiet foundation, because trade guides advise filling 40 to 60% of a deck with monthly contract parkers, the base load that pays on the first of the month, whether it snows or not, while the remaining spaces chase transient traffic at the high hourly rates. Price is the multiplier, because the same rectangle of air sells for different amounts depending on the clock. An early bird rate fills the deck before 9, an evening rate catches the dinner crowd, and on a stadium night the gate can earn more before kickoff than a gray Tuesday earns start to finish. And headcount is the revolution in progress. In a traditionally staffed operation, labor can swallow as much as 60% of operating costs, which makes the booth attendant the most expensive fixture in the building. Camera systems that read license plates have been replacing gates and cashiers across the country, and the technology firms deploying them report staffing costs dropping by up to 30% and net operating income rising 20 to 30% where the booth goes away. The whole machine fits on one line. The address sets the rate, the monthlies cover the fixed bills, the transient hours print the profit, and every human removed from the building flows straight to the bottom. In this trade, the best employee anyone ever hired is a camera. So if the customers serve themselves and the staff is a lens, how does anyone lose money here? Because every dollar of a garage's demand is generated by somebody else's building. A deck sells access to the offices, courtrooms, restaurants, and arenas around it. And when those thin out, no discount on earth steers the cars back.
That stopped being hypothetical this decade. With remote work holding on, downtown office vacancy has been running at record levels, north of 20% in New York's business districts, above 30% in Denver, and pushing toward 40% in San Francisco.
The industry's own tape shows the bruise. The research firm Ibis World sizes American parking lots and garages at about $13 billion in 2026, shrinking year over year, with roughly 7,600 businesses splitting the pot. Meanwhile, every fixed cost holds formation, because the land tax, the parking tax, the insurance, the maintenance calendar, and the loan payment all bill at full strength on a half-empty deck. The deck only fills when the block fills. You own the deck. You do not own the block. Both of the classic ways to die in this trade have been demonstrated in public, at full scale, with dates and dollar amounts attached. Mistake 1 is paying tomorrow's price for yesterday's demand, using borrowed money. In 2006, a Morgan Stanley infrastructure fund leased Chicago's 4 downtown garages, about 9,000 spaces beneath the parks along the lakefront, for 99 years, paying $563 million, better than $60,000 a space. Then the financial crisis hit, parking revenue sagged, and the debt stopped penciling. In January of 2014, the fund handed the keys to its lenders, led by the French Banque Société Générale, through a deed in lieu of foreclosure, and in 2016 the lease resold for $370 million, roughly a third below the original price. The lease ran 99 years. The math quit after 7. Mistake 2 is slower, cheaper, and far more common, treating the concrete as if it were finished. Here is where the salt from the top of this video comes due. Every winter, cars carry in melting snow loaded with road salt. The brine soaks into the deck, and once enough chloride reaches the reinforcing steel inside, the steel begins to rust and swell, cracking the structure from within. Engineers call it chloride-induced corrosion and warn it can cut a garage's service life in half. It is the entire reason that $30 to $90 maintenance calendar exists, and restoration contractors caution that a deferred repair list of $200,000 can compound into a structural rehabilitation costing $2 million. In April of 2023, a parking garage on Ann Street in Lower Manhattan, built in 1925, showed the country what the end of that road looks like. The city's Department of Buildings found the building had carried violations going back to the 1950s, and that its owner had sent a handyman, without permits or an engineer, to patch a crumbling brick pier on the mistaken assumption that steel stood inside it. There was no steel. The pier failed under the weight of a car, parked on the roof, the floors pancaked, and the collapse killed Willis Moore, the garage's longtime manager, and injured 7 other people. New York, home to some of the oldest parking structures in America, had begun requiring periodic garage inspections only the year before. Salt never misses a winter, and it never sends an invoice. Ride the elevator to the roof deck now, because from up here the contradiction from the opening finally resolves. Look outward, and parking is everywhere, and worth nothing. Oceans of free asphalt lapping every mall, supermarket, and office park in the country. Look straight down, and parking is scarce and expensive, because the scarce thing was never the space. The scarce thing is the downtown wrapped around it. Free parking sits on land nobody is bidding for. Paid parking sits on land everybody is bidding for. And the number on your gate has always been a land price in disguise. Think of a $3 umbrella that becomes a $10 umbrella the moment it rains. Nothing about the umbrella changed. Nothing about the parking space ever changes either. The city around it does. The people who saw this first were not garage operators, they were bankers. In 2008, Chicago leased its 36,000 parking meters to an investor group led by Morgan Stanley for 75 years at $1.15 billion, a price the city's own inspector general later judged at least $974 million short of what the system was worth. The investors have more than doubled their money since, and in 2026 the remaining decades of that lease drew a $2.5 billion offer from the infrastructure firm Stone Peak. Look at what is actually being bought in deals like that. Not meters, not asphalt, not gate arms. A decades-long toll on the busiest ground in town, with cars as the rent-paying tenants. The building under your feet is the same instrument, just 7 stories tall. So, the honest question, with every figure here flagged as an estimate, what does the owner actually clear? Price it in 3 levels, like the deck itself. Level 1 is the small market garage in a downtown that empties at 6. 200 spaces at $100 to $150 a month gross, somewhere in the $200,000 to $300,000 range in a good year. And after the taxes, the insurance, the upkeep calendar, and a management fee, typical cost patterns leave an owner high. 5 figures, sometimes low 6. Level 2 is the healthy urban deck the professional landlords hunt for. 300 spaces at the $2,400 national average gross, around $700,000 a year, and a buyer paying, say, $4 million at a 7% cap rate is, by definition, buying about $280,000 of annual income after operating costs. Whether the owner pockets all of that or hands a slice to a bank depends entirely on the mortgage. Level 3 is the one this whole video has been circling. The owner who bought the corner decades ago banks a modest yield through every cycle, and one day answers a phone call from a developer. At that moment, the property stops being priced per space and starts being priced per buildable square foot, and none of the parking math matters anymore. Levels 1 and 2 pay a salary. Level 3 pays off an address. As for who has cashed this trade hardest, he started at the very bottom of it. In the 1950s, Steve Ross was working in his in-laws' Manhattan funeral business when he noticed the funeral limousines sat idle every night, so he talked the family into renting them out after dark. The car income led him into a deal with the Kinney Parking Company, and in the early 60s the funeral homes, the rental cars, an office cleaning outfit, and the parking lots merged into one company that went public at a valuation around $12.5 million. Parking's steady cash became his acquisition currency. In 1969, That parking and services company bought Warner Brothers 7 Arts, the Hollywood studio, in a deal worth roughly $400 million in securities. And by 1972, Ross had sold the garages off and renamed what was left Warner Communications. He finished his career by building Time Warner, then one of the largest media companies on earth. He never meant to keep the parking. It was the down payment on everything else. So drop the gate for the night and total the floors. The air between the lines only carries a price where the land does. The concrete has to be fed, because the salt comes every winter, whether you budget for it or not. And the ticket machine was never the investment. It is the allowance the land pays you while you wait for the city to need the corner more than the cars do. A country holding as many as 8 parking spaces per car still cannot make enough room in 5, the few places that matter, and whoever owns that room gets to name its price. So the same deed sells 2 different things, a modest machine that runs itself, and a patient claim on the middle of a city. Only the person signing gets to say which one they are really buying. Which business should get the floor-by-floor treatment next? Name it in the comments, and tap subscribe, so the next breakdown does not pull out without you.